Tato everyone, tēnā koe. Welcome to the potentially final ever Regional Leadership Committee meeting. Thank you all for being here today. So this is the last time I'll be chairing the Regional Leadership Committee, and next time you'll see me, it'll be the Partnerships and Community Committee. A slightly different remit. Nonetheless, we will start off today with our regular business. We have an apology from Councillor Methven, who is on jury duty, so pretty good excuse. Did we have any other apologies?
Not happy to move.
No, Councillor Wilson's moving, and that's being seconded by Councillor Somerville. All in favour?
Aye.
All against? Alrighty. We'll move to accept those. We don't have anyone in the public forum today. Just a reminder to consider any conflicts you may have or any interests. And I'll just move that we confirm the agenda as is. If someone could second that, Councillor Wilson. Again, all in favour?
Aye.
Alright, against? No, carried. So first of all, just confirming the minutes from the meeting back in November last year. Could I have someone to move that? Councillor Noon, seconded by Councillor Wilson again. All in favour?
Aye.
All against? Carried. All right. Now we're on to our first paper, I believe. And again, we have our regular quarterly reports from the Environmental Delivery Group, regulatory update. You've got some papers in front of you printed out. If you're struggling to get on Diligent, just give that Diligent page a sync, and that paper 9.1 should be there. But yeah, this is the last time we'll be getting Joe and the team in this committee. I believe you'll be presenting into environmental delivery from here on out. So very happy to have you. Yeah, take us away.
Cool. Thank you, Chair, and also to the wider committee in terms of the support for this key part of our work program today too. So item 9.1 is just our regular quarterly update in terms of the activities of the consents, compliance, and the newly named Environmental Delivery Data and Systems team. Hopefully I've got that name correct. So that's the new name for Simon's team. This quarterly report just shows the continued high level of workload and consistent outputs from the team. Want to stress that whilst work of these teams is based on regulation, education, and supporting our customers and community is key to what the teams do. Attached to this report is the annual Te Urukahiko compliance metrics report, which we provide data into, and that's just a way in which the sector is looking to show the work that the teams do across the country. So a really good initiative there. And just an apology from Carlo, our compliance manager, who's away sick today. So just flagging there may be some compliance related questions in this paper that we may not be able to fully respond to, but we will do our best. And then also the attachment that was circulated and is on your desk is one of our new initiatives where we will be monthly uploading this dashboard to our website just to give the public further information around the key activities of our regulatory team. So this is the same information that comes to you all on a quarterly basis, but we're just piloting having this information available to our communities once a month so that they can see the work that the teams are doing. And that's just noted in the report, so I thought we would bring you a copy of what that looked like as well. So yeah, just really happy to take any questions.
Kia ora. Do we have any questions? I'll just also say that we've got a wastewater paper in 9.3, so if there's any questions around that, we'll save that till that paper. So do we have any other questions, I guess?
I don't have a question. Under in the report under 16A, Flint's Park Ladies Night.
Yeah, there we go.
under 16A Flint Park Ladies Bowl Tiputahi, I was a decision maker on that, so I'm probably just declaring it here so that should anyone come back, like the applicant, and say, hey, you at least know. Thanks.
Councillor Somerville.
Thank you. Yes, I had a couple of details I thought I would give an explanation for. Paragraph 7, you note that there were workshops in the Shag catchment, and there are a number of surface water consents granted after those. How did that all work? Why were those consents after?
Yeah, so in the Shag catchment, there are a number of consents for water takes that were due to expire within the next couple of years. So we had some questions around what the consent process would be for those water takes. So we decided to make the trip up and talk to them in person and take them through how those applications would work and help them fill those forms in. Those catchments in North Otago usually work really well together, the people who farm there, so it made a lot of sense for everyone to get all the information together at once.
Well, thank you. That sounds like good thinking. And talking of North Otago, I'm looking at map 3 in that first attachment. The cluster, the significant non-compliances and consent audits in North Otago. What's that all about?
Yeah, so those relate to audits, and if I'm getting this one right, relating to a large mining site up there. So we've done full audits, and there's also ones around annual returns that are there. So those were identified during that program. So I can talk about that because they're a company. Yeah. And we are ensuring that we do a full audit of all of their consents, which is I think over 100, and that is programmed to be completed this year. And work has been completed by the consent holder to move towards compliance with those.
Any particular concerns or improvements you'd like to tell us about?
I can't tell you off the top of my head in terms of that level of detail, but I do know that the team has got that full audit of all of the conditions of all of the consents programs, and we'll be able to give a more fulsome update in due course.
Thanks.
Do we have any other questions around the table? Oh, Councillor,
Yeah, just interested in,
and then
I think I'm going to ask this question on map 3 in the appendix page 27. The non-compliance, significant non-compliance in those, how many of those do not relate to the other report later on in the day?
I don't know, I'd have to do the maths.
Yeah.
Minus the one or off the other, but the best guide is in terms of where the red dot is located, would give you the indication of the difference between that. But in terms of does it relate to a wastewater compliance issue, that is better explained further in the next
Well, I don't think they
report.
do, and I'm just checking that because Councillor Somerville pulled our attention to the Shag, looking at that area where I think that's a Shag, but I could be wrong. And there's a substantial number of reds in there. Do we know what that is?
I think that's the same red that Councillor Somerville was asking about.
I thought he was
Yeah.
asking about, sorry, blues, sorry.
Yeah.
I thought he was asking about the blues, which are all in similar places as well, sorry. I thought he was talking about map 1. Did he ask questions? Sorry.
Map 1 is applications.
Yeah. I thought that's what he was asking about, sorry.
That's a good question.
Yeah, sorry.
Got it.
Yeah.
cool. Does that answer? Yeah, awesome. Councillor Laws, we're just on paper 9.1. Councillor Malcolm.
Yeah, I'll probably just to follow up on Councillor Somerville's, other than stuff that we have read in local newspapers, read those red dots in that one particular area. Is there anything else we should be concerned of, or that we should be concerned of at a governance level or an ORC level? And are you comfortable that we have everything under control in respect to those red dots?
Yes, but signalling that we haven't done the full compliance audit of all of those over 100 consents and all those conditions, so we do compliance on the active conditions and of reports that come into us. And if there was anything of concern, we are good at elevating that and discussing that with governance, so it would come through, yeah.
Thank you.
Just to add, if you look at figure 13, councillor, that'll tell you the types of consents that we've found significant non-compliance on. Doesn't necessarily tie back to the who's undertaking that activity, but it will give you an insight into.
Yeah, that's really good. No, I'm comfortable. Yep.
Alright, doesn't look like there are any other questions around the council table. Would anyone like to move the recommendations in front of us, which is just that we note the report and note that there's the 2023-2024 analysis prepared for Te Uru Kaika, Councillor Robertson and Councillor Somerville to second that. Would anyone like to speak on that? Alrighty. Oh, yeah, Councillor Malcolm.
Yeah, I do actually. And look, I think if I go back 5 years until now, the activity we have in this compliance space is really elevated, and it really shows, in my opinion, that ORC is doing a heck of a lot in that space. And I would think from the reports I'm getting is getting some very good results of changing some, especially in the education space, of changing habits and getting things going along in a really good direction. So well done, and putting those extra resources in that staffing level, I think are starting to pay real good dividends, not only for ORC but also for the environment. So well done.
Sure, I'll just echo Councillor Malcolm there, and just commend these dashboards that we've just received. I think very new initiative. So really good to see these, bright, colourful visual representations of the great work that's going on. Kia ora. Do you wanna-
Oh, no, it's
Right,
not,
it's
I'm
fine.
sure if we voted, sorry.
No, I was just checking that there weren't any other discussions around the table, and then we will put that to a vote. All in favour?
Aye.
All against? All right, motion carried. We'll move the paper 9.2. Yeah, so Steve Rushbrook online, and Joe, you're gonna introduce this?
Yeah, I will. So this paper is just an overview of the activities of the Harbour Master team over the summer period, which is one of the busier periods for our team. So just accounts for, it runs over some of those key interactions that they've had on the water and also with our community. And this is just an annual report that we bring through. Steve's joining us from Central, where he's actually helping out with our ORC water sampling program. So it's also one of the other key initiatives that we're doing in terms of supporting other ORC teams over the summer period. So happy for both of us to take questions where needed.
Is there anything you wanted to add off the top, Steve, or should I go to questions?
I think one of the highlights this year has been the public engagement, a good number of meetings, a good number of events that we've attended. And I think I'd just like to take the chance to highlight the Port and Harbour Marine Safety Code external review, which took place in November. Final report is available now, and it reads really, really well. So there's a large piece of work that goes on behind the scenes we don't usually see, managing the risk management for the large ships and vessels with Port Otago, and that external review has come back very good. And we're super pleased with that. So other than that, no, happy to take any questions.
And just noting that the full summary of that report will come through in our next quarterly update, because this committee was deferred, and then so that's happened in this reporting period.
Alrighty, any questions? No questions. Does anyone? Oh, sorry, Councillor McCall.
Yeah, I thought I could have one question for the Harbour Masters. I was just looking on the dashboard that was on our tables here. I noticed July had the most boat hours. I was just wondering, seemed like an unusual month for me to be out and about so much. I was wondering you got lost, Steve.
I think those boat hours have picked up somewhat in regard to the use of the vessels and the asset that we have around the water sampling piece. So whilst we are on the water seasonal, every month our hours are going up and up because we're spending more time supporting the environmental monitoring program for the sampling in the lakes, as I'm doing currently. So yeah, I don't think it's particularly skewed too much. It's just another work stream that's come online, and we're able to supply the asset internally for other programs.
Thank you.
Any other questions around the table? Or do I have anyone who'd like to move that we note this report? Yeah, Councillor Colour and Mr. Langsbury to second that. Would anyone like to speak on this? Alrighty, I will put that. All in favour?
Aye.
All against? Motion is carried. And that is 9.2. So now Joe is staying with us for 9.3. We will be providing a summary of the compliance with wastewater treatment plants and the actions that have been taken by council to achieve compliance. Worth noting though that because this is a committee that was pushed back last month, the period covered in this report doesn't cover a lot of ongoing shot over stuff. But I think Joe and the team are still prepared to answer questions if they're related to the paper and shot over. But perhaps we'll take any general questions first, and I'll obviously let Joe.
So just a bit of a intro for this paper. So yeah, as the chair said, the purpose of this report is to provide the committee with a high level summary of the compliance of TA wastewater treatment plants and the actions that have been taken by us to monitor consent compliance. ORC's role in wastewater treatment plants is as the regulator, so either through processing consent applications or undertaking our compliance functions. We are not the plant owners or operators. Under Council's compliance work program, monitoring the compliance with these consents is a priority 1 activity. This means that these plants in general are audited at least once per year. The report covers the period of the 1st of April 2023 to 31st of December 2024. And it is recognised that for some sites, the compliance picture has changed over the last 4 months. Across Otago, there are a number of different discharge systems in terms of some to land and some to water. And under the conditions of their consents, there are various requirements in terms of standards and limits and information that has to be returned to council within specific timeframes. As noted in the paper, compliance levels vary across councils and plants, and ultimately compliance is expected of our consent holders. In the reporting period, 21 significant non-compliances, 11 moderate non-compliances, 9 low risk non-compliance and 9 full compliance grades were given as a result of our consent audits. Monitoring of compliance remains a high priority for ORC, and any compliance action is taken in accordance with our compliance and enforcement policy and with the RMA. And the focus is on taking the right compliance action at the right time. To date, this report has been presented to committee every 2 years, and by way of an update, since the report was written, there has been a change with CODC's compliance status. So the wastewater treatment plants have been audited and new reports have been issued, and they have resulted in 5 fully compliant audits. So just wanted to reflect that whilst there's a compliance picture within the paper, there are some updates that have happened since then. I also want to take the time to acknowledge our hardworking compliance team and environmental delivery and data systems team who work on monitoring compliance of these consents. It is a full-time job, and we are incredibly lucky to have such skilled and dedicated people working on this priority area for council. So happy to take questions. No doubt there will be a number. So yeah, in your hands.
Thank you, Joe. I've noticed Councillor Law's hand up first, and then we'll go to Councillor Malcolm McCall, and then Wilson, and then Forbes. So, Councillor Law's floor is yours.
Should take me first.
Yeah, you're on mute.
Cool.
I'm not around.
Oh, I know.
Don't get too carried away about fights. you know?
Yeah.
Because you're-
Can you turn it on? I'm trying to turn them on, but it's not working, sorry. I'm not sure why.
Are you able to?
Still
unmute
muted,
yourself?
Michael.
Should we go to
Michael.
Councillor Forbes?
Otherwise, yeah, we'll go on and Kylie will try and see if she can unmute you. Right, it was Councillor Malcolm next. I'll circle back.
Okay, so significant non-compliance, with significant regulations and national standards where there are significant environmental consequences and or a high risk of adverse environmental effects, that's significant non-compliance. So when I look at, and it is very good to hear that there is, CODC has changed its pattern, which is good. So on the table you gave us is 21 of our audits showed significant non-compliance over that period of the 40. What additional monitoring are we requesting of TAs when we notice that, and at what stage do we jump in? Because if we've only audited them once a year, at what stage do we actually jump in when?
Yeah, so with the majority of those consent holders, there are monthly meetings with their staff in terms of talking through how they will achieve compliance with the steps they are taking. So there are regular interactions, and then also at the staff to staff level, there will be regular meetings and communication, and also follow-up audits. And also if there is significant non-compliance, there will be plans in place in terms of how they will return back to compliance and the steps they will take. So it isn't as if there is a one-off audit once a year and significant compliance issues are identified. There is ongoing interactions, and then also various compliance tools that we will use as well, from our infringement notices through to our abatement notices, which set out pathways for them to return to compliance with dates.
So subsequent, Chair, so if someone does have a breach of a condition that is outside, say, an audit period, so we have a plant failure and we're what's going out doesn't meet a condition, have they automatically got to let us know? Or?
Yes, they will. We do
Yep.
encourage self-reporting, and then also there is the pollution hotline. But in terms of it is expected that if there are issues on site, they will self-notify, and we are in regular contact with those consent holders as well. And as we have demonstrated with issues where there are sites where there are compliance issues, we are on site regularly and monitoring compliance and checking out how that site is operating.
Yeah, so, and you mentioned CODC, which is now 5 fully compliant, which is, so there's been a heck of an improvement. So have they still got any significant non-compliant? Is that a bit tough?
So I'm just making eye contact with Shelley, who is our principal compliance specialist for
I see.
wastewater.
Two of the sites do.
Yeah, two of the sites do.
Notices in place.
Yeah.
And they provide quarterly updates on the lines.
Two still up, the rest of it.
Yeah.
That's very good. Thank you. At this stage.
Could you just repeat? So just because we might have picked up, so there are still 2 sites for CODC significantly non-compliant, and that they have abatement notices on those sites, and they report quarterly on progressing to rectify any issues.
Was that everything, Councillor?
At this stage,
Yeah,
I've got.
perfect. And then I'll pop back over to you, Councillor Laws.
Thank you. Can you hear me now?
We can.
Brilliant. First of all, can I just say to the compliance staff, good on you for this. It's nice to have detailed information on each WWTP in the region. And this is a massive improvement and over what I first came onto this council with. Thank you for doing so. The second issue relates to the 2 graphs, graph 2 and table 3. They're on paragraphs 20 and 21. I just want to make sure I'm reading them properly. The first graph 2 shows the level of non-compliance over those 4 years and then breaks it into the territorial authority regions. Am I reading this that properly, that the Waitaki District Council and the Clutha District Council have major issues with non-compliance to do with their wastewater treatment plants in the 2024 year? Is that correct?
So I'm just checking that was graph 2 under paragraph 20. You were asking about council laws, if I'm in the right place with you.
It's headline Territorial Local Authority WWTP 2024 compliance.
Graph 1, perfect, thank you. Yes, yeah, so those show for each of the territorial authorities the current compliance status and the issues, and those are the 2 councils within that graph that have a large proportion of significant non-compliances. So yes.
But that graph's bad, isn't it? I mean, if I was just to take an overview of that, it means that there is significant non-compliance throughout the region in every territorial authority area.
Yeah, and that has been reflected in the commentary further down in the report that, you know, compliance statuses across those councils do vary and at plants. And there are some councils that do have a higher number of significant non-compliances, but there are ones that do have more plants than others, and various compliance action and steps has been taken to address that. But yes, those are some correct conclusions to draw from those graphs.
Okay, then I'm then going to go to the graph under that. TA WWTP consent compliance history. And that allows me to go through the total of them from 2020 through to 2024. The thing that immediately strikes you about that graph, it seems to me, is that there's been no real improvement over the last 4 years. Am I reading that correctly?
So there was an improvement in compliance status in 2021 and 2023, but if you do look at over that period of time, there has been, I guess, a consistent level of those compliance issues. And what we will be proposing to do is bring back another paper that looks at a 5-year trend and provides additional data so we can get a really good picture over time of where that compliance picture is heading. Reflecting that whilst we most definitely expect compliance from all of our consent holders, a lot of the changes within these plants do require multi-million-dollar investments and changes like that. But yeah, compliance over time did improve, but it has, again, if you look at the 2024 stats, increased in terms of the number of significant non-compliances.
Do you really need another year to tell you that things aren't good?
No, we have a lot of available information to us. It's more just so that there is a clear look at how our program is going over the last 5 years and how that compliance is tracking across the board.
We've just gone through all the consents and compliance and enforcements in the previous issue. Is this the worst area, wastewater treatment plants, in terms of non-compliance in the Otago region?
It would be hard to compare it directly to other key activities, but it is a priority 1 activity through our compliance and enforcement program and monitoring, and is highly monitored. So yes, it is a priority activity, and yes, the compliance status isn't where we would like it to be.
Okay, and so would it be reasonable for me to look at these 2 graphs and go, the compliance and enforcement processes of the Otago Regional Council are not having any effect upon the treatment plants in the region, nor their improvement?
Yeah, I would go, Michael Joseph's looking at me for this one. So no, I don't think that's a fair assumption. I think what I'd draw your attention to is the table on the next page, which is table 3, demonstrates that there's been 12 abatement notices cancelled at various plants over this reporting period. And what that demonstrates is where action is taken, they are achieving compliance, and therefore we will cancel an abatement notice. Just going back to your previous question around, do we need more data? I don't think we need more data in terms of years, but I think there is some more data we can present that will tell the story around the changes within individual plants. So what we're interested in seeing is when there is focus and investment in a plant, are they addressing any non-compliances and then maintaining a level of compliance, or does it sort of deal with the issue and then it just gets back to non-compliant? Because if it's a case of with investment over time, as plant by plant is invested in, we're seeing a greater level of compliance across the board, then we'll know that the action that we're taking is getting us some sustained improvements. At the moment, looking at those graphs, your conclusions were exactly right. As an aggregated number, we're not seeing improvements across the board, but what I'm interested to understand is, are we seeing long-term improvements on a plant-by-plant basis? Because when I look at the abatement notice cancellations, it does show that we are getting improvements where we take action and require specific attention from the TLAs with regard to whatever matters we've raised through compliance. So I think that the answer to your question there is no. I think our processes are effective. I think this is an incredibly challenging area, and I think we can probably share some more data insights to tell you whether or not the action we're taking and the action the TAs are taking on the plants are actually resulting in sort of sustainable compliance change, rather than just addressing an issue for a short period of time and then it just descends into what it was prior to. So that's where I think we're at with this data.
Yeah, we see. I'm looking at those, Richard. I'm not debating with you. I'm just looking at those. I guess the impression of anybody looking at those graphs would be that when you do take a compliance action, it's a quick fix, and then you end up going back to the problem of wastewater treatment plants malfunctioning. And I'm wondering now if there isn't a systemic problem, not a compliance and monitoring problem, but a systemic problem in wastewater treatment plants throughout our region on the basis of the evidence that's presented today.
Yeah, and I think that's the question, and that's where we need to do a little bit more analysis and present you a little bit more data around that issue. And that's, I think that's what Joe's referring to in terms of a future report.
Okay, when will we see that?
It's going to be hopefully at the end of this year.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Cool. Alrighty, I'll go over to Councillor McCall and then Forbes.
Oh, thank you, Chair. I think probably similar questions. I just want to put the spotlight. First of all, I think it's really encouraging. The numbers are concerning, most definitely, if you look at the graphs and the pictures, but the discussion in the document is probably a bit more positive, where it's really good that you've gone site to site and you can actually see that there's action being done on all the sites. So I just want to bring the spotlight into the Clutha area a little bit, because the Clutha area has been an area where there's been some issues in the past, and they've probably asked for some challenges in the management of their wastewater. But I do get the feeling, reading the report, that the Clutha Council is working on making improvements in their wastewater infrastructure, and it's a lot of it might be as simple as management changes and actually getting the forms filled in, but also some of the physical wastewater stuff. And so I guess my question is, do you think that and I'm just using Clutha as an instance, I guess here, do you think that the increased input that the Clutha Regional Council will be sufficient for them to move from their current non-compliant state into a fully compliant or near fully compliant state over a reasonable period of time?
And I'll speak across the board in terms of councils and other consent holders. When they do have a plan in place and a commitment to achieve compliance, we do find that works through this process. And as Richard has said, where there's been abatement notices cancelled, there has been that investment and time input from those consent holders to achieve compliance, and staff put a lot of time into those processes, and abatement notices are useful tools in that. But yes, where there is time and money and investment and commitment from the consent holders, there are positive outcomes or improvements with compliance.
I think in terms of the detail and in terms of the questions on Clutha, it's very difficult for us to comment. I mean, it's reliant on an investment profile through the LTP, that won't be insignificant, that will address concerns. And, you know, for Clutha, they have a significant challenge in terms of the number of plants, both wastewater and drinking water, that they have over a vast area with a small ratepayer base. That's not an excuse, because our job is to ensure compliance with consents. That's just reality in terms of what they're dealing with. The engagement from Clutha has got better. I would say it probably wasn't where it needed to be, but it has got better, which is good. So in terms of Joe building relationships at a senior management level down to staff being able to deal directly with each other to try and identify what problems are and what can be done to resolve them, that's positive. But I think we will still see some compliance issues, not just at Clutha, but just generally because of the age of plants and the investment pressures and some of those decisions that will need to be made, and we will just have to continue to do our role in terms of monitoring and appropriate enforcement tools.
The paper, however, would suggest there is improvements being made on.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. That's what I wanted.
All right, Councillor Hawes.
Thank you. Mine's pretty much in the same area, and like Michael, I was really concerned about thinking about a systemic failures here, compliance falling, and I think that's really worrying, despite some of the improvements that we've got. But I did wonder, I'll take you to, what page is that, 119, Ormeco and Roxburgh Village. Why were non-compliances not reported? And is this a common theme? It seemed to be like that for QLDC too. And are people taking us seriously here? Is one question. I want to come back to some others too, but let's just start with that. How come non-compliances are not reported?
I'm not sure the specific reason is why that one wasn't reported, but we do encourage and expect consent holders to report those issues through to us. And, you know, I would like to think, and I know that these consent holders do take us seriously in terms of our role as regulator, and we have very much demonstrated that in the level of compliance action that we have taken over time in relation to issues that have come up. But in terms of that council's reason for not notifying us, I'm not across that level of detail.
Yeah, I get that, but I think we've got the same problem in a QLDC and with the shot over it, and it's, I don't know if you've seen the things that are on social media today, people filming what's coming out of there, and it doesn't look like anything like what paragraph 66 would indicate in terms of, you know, how would we get to that place? How can it possibly be close to any compliance at all?
So I'm gonna I haven't seen the social media today.
No, fair enough.
I find that's not part of what I've been doing today.
Yeah, I know you're busy on this. I'm not trying to get at you.
In social media. And in terms of your reference to paragraph 66, so we'll note that this report was through until
2024.
Yeah, so it doesn't cover some of those specific issues. In terms of staff checking on shot over, we, as you're aware, and we've communicated to governors, we are on site weekly and are keeping a very close eye on that. So I will know someone across the team will be keeping an eye on what is happening on that site. Yeah.
I've got two other things, just brief questions. The pipe that got going in 2024, that discharge pipe, did that require a consent, and did we consent it?
So
paragraph 65, sorry.
Thank you. So my understanding is that there isn't a consent in place for that. And in terms of what is happening with it at the moment, because that matters before the court, I'm not going to comment any further on that publicly at the moment.
Okay. I'd just like to point out that public looking at this report will have at least the questions that I've got. It's a real worry what's happening there. But I think that's all the questions. I do wonder actually systemically, is some of this some of these issues shooting back to us not getting to some sort of Three Waters solution and councils waiting? Do you think?
I think you'd have to put that to the TAs, councillor. There was a period of significant uncertainty for the TAs in terms of Three Water assets and future management of Three Waters and how that would affect budgets in terms of management of assets and investment into those assets. I can't speak to decisions that were made definitively as to whether that deferred investment or maintenance, but I can say that was a significant period of uncertainty when the assets were going one way and then they weren't. And so I think that will have made it difficult for that consistent and long-term asset planning. In saying that, there's still been some very good work done at a number of plants on an ongoing basis. And
I note that improvement.
Yeah. So just bringing you back to your comment on Shotover, I guess we're well aware of the public interest in that site. This report, and I know you acknowledge this, Alexa, this report deals to the 31st of December. So all of the things that have happened in the last couple of weeks that we know are of high interest to people, both in the Queenstown community and the Clutha Mato further down, Kawerau and into the we know that there is significant interest in those, and we are doing our bit as the regulator to get that regular series of testing underway. So that was first one. We've identified those sites. They've been shared with the media. We've undertaken a set of tests on Monday. We're going to get into a process where that data will be made available to the public weekly as the results are received. And we have also arranged with our environmental monitoring team to increase the frequency of testing at the Shard Road monitoring site downriver in the Kawerau, and that will enable the public also to go online and just check whether those key parameters are changing due to the Section 330 emergency discharge. We can't be at that site 24/7. We can't afford to be, and nor can we. We just don't have the resources, even if we wanted to be. So we will rely on the testing that we put in place, and the staff take that very seriously, and they do it very well. And that will tell us whether or not that treatment plant is operating at a high standard, which our testing to date, including some results from Monday, which will be shared soon, is showing that it is. What we are relying on, though, is the operator of that treatment plant, being QLDC, being the ones that take responsibility for ensuring it continues to operate well. Our monitoring is there to provide some independent assurance to the public, but that can only be at a point in time, because we can't do more than that. We will respond to complaints from time to time, but we're not going to respond to every social media post and every other piece of correspondence that comes in, other than acknowledging it is important for people. We know it is, and we're treating it that way. And hopefully, once we get the data regularly on the website, which the data team and web team are working on at the moment, that will give people a place to go so they can look at some independent results and draw their own conclusions. So just make that point now, even though it's outside the scope of this paper, because I'm very aware of the public interest in the matter.
And do we think that there is, I think there's still probably public confidence in ORC collection of data, but do you think there's still public confidence in QLDC and perhaps the operators' data collection and publication?
I can't speak to that, Alexa. I can only deal with our own data.
All right, thank you.
All right, we have Councillor Kelleher and then Wilson.
Thank you. My questions, if you can help me around the significant non-compliance is based on a playing field of the consents that are sitting in place at the moment for each of those sites. And then so for each of those sites, I assume that those consents may vary in what they require and the standards they are required to meet. at each of those sites?
Yes, that's correct. So each site will have specific consent limits or requirements, depending on the receiving environment and the operation of that plant. But there are some general standards that are looked at in terms of setting wastewater conditions and monitoring that the consents team have used over the years. So where we can be consistent and achieve that, we will. But a lot of the plants do have different consent limits on them. And again, that is something that the government I know is consulting on at the moment in terms of the proposed wastewater standards.
Right, so across the last 5 years or the 5-year reporting period that we're seeing with the graphs here, has there been any change in the standards that those consents are required to meet to, either from a national level or a local level? The playing field is the same from year one to
Yeah,
year
from
five?
year one, yep. There were a couple of consents that we reviewed, which is noted in there to make some changes, but they will all be operating under the consent conditions that were put on the consent at the time it was granted, so that playing field has stayed consistent for them.
So then, given that, and because we're seeing so much red suddenly in this report, that it has to be an operator situation, because the same plant is there, it is the same equipment, it is being maintained to a standard that they will be required to maintain it to. So it is purely looking at operator, contractor, and their internal operations that are ending up with this red outcome.
Yeah, so as consent holder, they are responsible for all of those things you've spoken about, and that is what leads them to achieving or not achieving compliance with those consent conditions that have been put on those consents when they were approved.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you for the report, and I'm going to veer down into some detail into one, but I just want to reflect on the three waters and where it left some of the councils, because I do, and maybe I've got it wrong. My understanding is that some people left the industry thinking that roles might have gone, and I'm just wondering if that was something that happened in these.
Not something that I could comment on or am aware of. Sorry, again, question for TAs.
And then the question I had is, have we really done everything we could as not so much as a regulator in a regulatory role, but when we reflect on the long-term plans and the investment going into these councils, you know, we take a quick look usually at their financials, but I'm just wondering if we really have they put the money in for the investment for these things? Do we put our eyes over there?
So as a general rule, we haven't submitted on council long-term and annual plans, not in my time here anyway. So if governance were of a mind to do that, then that's something that we would talk to the team who handle our submissions and have a look at that. But it's not something we've done routinely.
I appreciate that we haven't done it routinely, and I'm just wondering whether we should be lifting our game in that respect and putting submissions in, because you know, I found it, and I'm going to give the example as Clutha, that felt it was important to fund a water system to an area that had a wastewater issue, but didn't have the commensurate investment in the wastewater. That has possibly exacerbated the problem there, and yet they could have possibly reduced costs by doing them both together. And that's why I'm wondering whether we should be doing that. So that's probably a question for us to think about later.
Water regulator.
No, this is their long-term plan budget, where they're not doing the investment to do.
So we have on a couple of consents where where there are upgrades or changes that have need to be made, we have sought confirmation that there is funding available or will be committed, and that has been done through the consent process, but it isn't that large scale looking at that level of investment. It's just more ensuring that they do have that money available or a plan in place to achieve those upgrades that are part of that consent. So on a very small operational level.
Yeah, and so look, and that's exactly where I'm going to go with my last question is, as an example, and you mentioned it slightly in the report, but I just want to get clarity. The Waihola wastewater system had a condition put in it in March 2022 to give an asset management report within the year to say how they're really going to move this forward in general terms and improve on it. It got a short-term consent because it wasn't seen to be the best solution, and my understanding is, and it's referred to here, it wasn't done within a year. I don't think it was done within 2 years. What compliance rating did that get for not doing it? It's referred as being non-compliant, but I'm not quite sure if it's significant or not.
I don't know the answer to that off my head. Sorry, Councillor Wilson. Significant is the answer from the back from my experts.
Well, and look, that gives me some, that comfort that it is seen as significant, because if they're not planning now, or if they haven't got the plan in place, then it won't be in their long-term plan, therefore it won't be funded. So, and as an example, and I'm sure there's others, but I do think it's a space that we possibly have to get into. Thank you.
Alrighty, we're gonna go back to Councillor Laws and then we're going to Councillor Malcolm and Mr. Langsbury.
Listen, thank you very much. Can I just echo a lot of the concerns of Alexa? But the reason I'm asking these questions is, Richard, because of your reply to Alexa's question just recently. You say that you're monitoring the discharge into the Shotover to ensure they reach environmental standards, but you're not doing it yet. You're not going to start that until Monday. Is that right?
No, I said it started. We've done 2 rounds of testing, one on the day the emergency discharge started and another one on the Monday just been.
Okay, so you're doing it weekly.
Correct.
Okay. Is it your intention to do it every Monday from now on? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah, so it will be every week, and I think it will be every Monday, just confirming the day with the operational team. And just to note, we have been undertaking water quality samples since before Christmas, and those have been weekly or pre or post any reported incidents on site. So it's not new sampling, it's just new locations and difference. Thank you.
So the 2 reports that you've had since they've started putting, it'll be 2 or 1? No, it's 1, isn't it? Since they've started putting the treated effluent in the Shotover. That's available for public view, yeah?
It only came back from the lab early, I think yesterday. I'm not too sure of when it arrived, but it will be available for the public this week, is the intent. Yes.
So let me get this right. This is the testing you did on Monday.
So the testing that was done on the first day that the Section 330 discharge commenced, which was the 31st of
April.
March. That will be published tomorrow, because it takes a week to 10 days for the testing to occur, the report to be received by staff, and for staff to review it, and then we'll publish it. And then we would expect the next test, which is the Monday just been, the 7th, to be available middle of next week, and then we'll have a process in place to continue to add those to the website for people to have a look at.
Yes, it's not exactly instant, is it? So you're relying, you also said, Richard, upon the QLDC to take responsibility on this issue. That was to do with the testing. And you said we're not resourced to do anything about it. I had a look at we've got 41 CME staff in this area, 41. This is an extraordinary situation. It's unprecedented in my time on council that a wastewater treatment plant has failed to this level and to this degree. Why don't we have the staff available when you've got 41 full-time staff, according to the report presented by the consent people, the national consent people, to actually upskill and will upgrade monitoring in this area?
So, a few things. One is I referred to QLDC's responsibility being to operate and maintain that plant at a compliant level. So just to be clear, we have a role to continue to monitor. So my comment around QLDC responsibility is they are responsible for that treatment plant and keeping it operating. So that was the first thing. Second thing was around the level of staffing, and we can't be there all the time. It is unprecedented for us to be at a site every week for a sustained period of time, often more than once a week, undertaking the level of tests that we are. And when I say more than once a week, that's because we do respond to complaints or any other concerns that there is non-compliance on that site. So the level of monitoring that is being undertaken by staff is higher, certainly higher than any other site I would have seen in my time here. So we are putting significant resource into this. because of both the public interest and also the risk. The third thing was a comment around a failure. I can't remember the exact word, sorry, Michael, but the failure of the plant. Just point out again that just for clarity, the failure is the disposal field, which is part of the plant. So I'm not saying there's not a failure there, but again, the testing results to date are showing that the plant, the treatment component, hasn't failed. There was one period of non-compliance about a year ago, and that was subject to abatement notices has been resolved, but our testing recently has shown that the treatment plant is operating, but absolutely the disposal field has not. That's where the failure has been. So just to, I guess, clarify that in terms of the record. So I think that was the questions, Michael, but I guess the substantive one then there about ORCs.
It's just that, well, if it's only to do with the disposal field, then, and sludge isn't meant to leave a wastewater treatment plant, Richard, how does sludge end up in the disposal field if it isn't a plant failure?
So the media stand-up by QRDC mentioned that the if we call it sediment or particles that are disposed as part of the process that collect in the gravels and effectively form what looks like a sludge and reduces the permeability of those gravels in terms of disposal. So whether it's technically sludge, you could probably find a number of definitions, but it is particulate matter that is left over after the treatment process that is collecting in the gravels and forming what looks like a sludge material that reduces the permeability and has stopped that disposal field operating. So that doesn't mean that the discharge was non-compliant. It was still complying with the consent parameters that were set in that original consent. It's just that an outcome has been that the disposal field has not operated as it was intended when the consent was put through.
So you don't know if it's sludge or not, Richard?
No, I don't. And under my definition, based on what I've seen and read, we have referred to it as that, and I would stand by that. I'm sure
that it is sludge.
Yeah, I'm sure. Well, no, Michael, you've asked me for my opinion. I'm sharing it. So based on everything I've seen and read, I'm satisfied with the update we gave, which is that the sludge that had ended up in the bottom of that disposal field had reduced the permeability. I'm sure you could find technical people that would make the argument that it's not a sludge, but that's the position we've taken.
Sorry, the position you've taken, let's clarify this, I don't quite understand, is that it is sludge in the containment field.
Correct. That's how we've described it.
And that's okay, which again, I'm just suggesting to you, shouldn't be there. It's meant to be at the bottom of the oxidation pond. So if it's getting out of the plant, surely the plant is failing, not just the dispersal field.
That's not what our findings have been, and we're getting very close to material that is currently before the court in the enforcement order. So I think we've been quite liberal in our discussion of this today, but I'm just conscious of that line at the moment.
So let me get this right. You can't tell me as a governance member certain facts because it's in front of mediation and the environment.
Not in a public meeting, no.
But you could tell us privately.
We could provide a confidential briefing, which we have been doing.
Oh, you looked like maybe you wanted to add
Oh,
something there.
I was just saying that we have had a number of technical experts involved in our shot over monitoring process as well as our very highly skilled staff. So we are across a number of the issues as it relates to that treatment plant and have had significant technical expertise as well. So the team has been very well supported there.
Thank you. I believe we have Councillor Malcolm next and then Mr. Langsbury.
I just want to refer to a couple of general things, and there will be a question just on significant non-compliance, as where significant environmental consequences and a high risk of adverse environmental effects. So that's under significant non-compliance. And then in paragraph 85, we say water treatment plants present a high environmental risk where they are not compliant with their consent conditions. So what I'm trying to really understand is our whole because we are continuing to have significant non-compliance, and to me, significant non-compliance is presenting environmental risk that when, although where in general, all those actions could have been avoided. So I'm wondering why in our consent conditions that we are simply asking or preferring that people give testing results to us, when if we look at a water extraction consent, the rules are now that we've got to supply it every 15 minutes by telemetry and the likes, which again on water abundant catchments, probably the risk of taking water is not very high at all, but nevertheless that's a condition. So why haven't we elevated, especially with the non-compliance history that we've got, why have we not elevated the requirement on these TAs to actually present us more information quicker, so we can actually limit and jump in quicker to ensure there is no adverse environmental effects?
So I think what you're referring to is what is in place under the National Water Take regulations in terms of telemetry and the requirements for data to come through. And when we have granted those consents in the past, we've based it on the most appropriate monitoring regime and in terms of returning data to us as quickly as possible. And we have to ensure that they operate and return that in with those timeframes. And where possible, if there is more data or more frequent data, we do ask that it is returned more frequently to us, or if we need to through an abatement notice, we will ensure that that gets supplied to us quicker or more data. And also some of the newer consents do have requirements and for them to return data to us within 5 days of it being reported to elect. So it is reasonably quick across the board where it can be, and we do look at ensuring that new technologies can be used and supported by us to ensure that we get good quality and timely data.
So there seems to be nothing that says if you're adversely affecting a receiving environment, you need to fix it immediately. Have we got that step anywhere?
So we will use the right compliance tools that we've got, and we are limited by those tools. So where we can, we'll use infringement notices, or we'll put an abatement notice in place, or we will seek an enforcement order like we are doing to have some changes or things done differently. In terms of just looking at the and it would rely on the specific consent conditions as well in terms of triggers and levels for each site as well. So we use the right compliance tool at the right time to ensure that compliance is being achieved, or steps are being made to improve compliance.
Yeah. Can I have just a follow up on that? On paragraph 45, you've stated that CODC have employed more people to monitor their compliance and to monitor their wastewater treatment plants and provide compliance monitoring. So here's the CODC, and you may not be able to answer this, but have they actually employed anyone to fix it? Because the monitoring actually doesn't fix it. You know, increased more ratepayers' cost by employing someone to monitor it, but have they actually employed the people to fix it?
I don't know their specific jobs, but what I would reflect on is that they have made meaningful steps to improve their compliance, and which was noted in terms of those compliant consent audits that we've just completed. So we've used Monitor there, but I would imagine that they are employed to work on and operate those treatment plants.
Yeah, and with your indulgence, Chair, we've got so I just ask on the Palmerston, Oamaru and Mulraki plants, because the WDC has a very red line. Are those plants now in a state where they are not adversely affecting the environment?
So we, WDC, we have had good engagement with them in terms of a staff level. They have a new team who are overseeing their wastewater treatment plants, and the work that they are doing with the ones that you have just mentioned. There has been improvement with Palmerston since 2022 in terms of an increase in the disposal area and the rate of discharge. So they are making changes. There are still compliance tools being used there, but we are actively engaging with WDC, and they are due for their audits this Friday. So we will have a clearer picture of if there are any improvements or effects, but we have been closely monitoring those sites.
Yeah. And the comment that I think it was Councillor Wilson said about are we looking at budgets to prove that these councils are serious about reaching compliance? Are you aware of any council that has actually taken action beyond, above and beyond, I suppose, their long-term plans to actually finance something and get something done quicker?
I'm not sure, sorry, but we have seen investment from councils into these programs in terms of time from their staff, but I don't know the answer to that question.
Yeah, scary. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you for your patience, Mr. Lansbury. Over to you.
That's fine. Two questions. One's in response to Richard's comments. With regard to QLDC and shot over and use of their emergency RMA provisions to be doing what they're doing, is there any role or responsibility or not that sits with ORC in enabling that to happen?
No, there's not. That decision's taken by the party that rely on the Section 330 powers, so they make that assessment. The information we will get more information provided as part of the consent that must be submitted within 20 working days of the activity starting, but it's not for us to say yay or nay. That's an assessment they undertake.
So I probably have a supplementary on that. They didn't contact our team here and say, well, we're kind of in a little bind. Do you support us taking this particular action? That type of activity doesn't happen. They just go ahead and do it.
No, they would go ahead and we wouldn't, as a regulator, comment because it's not our role.
No, that's right. Just confirm that. And the next question is really, it comes from being a RMA commissioner, where a lot of the time you'll get submissions come in that will say, and I'll use that particular activity as an example, where plan changes or subdivisions are consented based on the ability of effluent treatment plant to accept all those new connections. And looking at the fact there's potentially 21 across the current region that may or may not have subdivisions that are going to want to connect to them in the future. What role does the ORC have in going, well, actually, unless you meet, or can you say yes or no, you can't do it? It's kind of a process question, if you understand what I'm saying. It's been granted because QLDC said, yes, we can accept all those connections in the future, where we look at the reports in front of us and says for that plant, for the last 4 years, there's been lots of non-complying. And then when you look at 21 across the whole region, I'm just wondering where the responsibility sits from a consenting authority to say you can't give effect to that subdivision until the treatment plant is ready to receive the effluent.
So in part, it'll be around what that consent authorises them to do in terms of the scope and scale of the application. And some of the plants have accounted for growth and future growth, and our role will be ensuring that whatever additions are in line with those consent conditions and complying with those. And that's my understanding of our regulatory role to date in the process.
And I think my question really relates to, at the time that you're making that decision to allow subdivision to happen, you're not thinking there's going to be significant non-compliance going forward?
So I think the key distinction,
is there a performance issue there?
Yeah, so I think the key distinction is that we are not regulatory authority for subdivision consent, so land use consent, so the TAs. So effectively the onus is on them to ensure that they are comfortable that the infrastructure that they have can adequately service new connections and retain compliance with any consents. So we don't have a direct role in that process. we consent the wastewater treatment plant and assess the number of connections at that time, and therefore and set the limits through conditions that they need to comply with. Post that point, there may be some controls that have been assessed in terms of the total number of connections, but the land use consent processing is not undertaken by ORC, so we don't have the ability to intervene at that period, at that point in time, sorry.
Thanks.
Do we have any other questions around the table? If not, let's see if anyone would like to move.
So I did have.
Yeah.
And it is on the Shotover, and it is, we have some published results that the current readings are really, really good. And are we confident those results, are they our results, or was it QLDC's? We're really confident in our, because there's been papers, reports that those figures are wrong. And I don't believe if we're doing them, they will be wrong, but have we got the veracity behind them to say, well, actually, we're doing it the correct way, and I'm not doubting you.
No, so we are assessing those results and we'll publish them, and there'll be some commentary with them.
Thank you.
I have full faith in the team undertaking the testing, but we'll summarise them and comment on them at the time we publish them.
So the team are incredibly well trained in terms of sampling and follow really clear protocols. So they are very, very good at their job.
Thank you.
I think the results you're referring to might have been the QLDC ones.
Yeah, the 10 and the 14. Yep, cool. Thank you.
QLDC. Okay, we have.
Yeah, I was gonna move.
All right.
Happy to second.
Councillor Robertson, seconded by Councillor Malcolm. Would you two like to speak on it? Yeah, go for it.
Just a simple thanks for this report. It's part of a series of regular reports that we do on wastewater in the space, and just wanted to say that I feel that we're doing our job robustly, consistently and fairly, and it shows that in the report. Just also want to reflect that we need to do our job really well, but we don't own or operate plants, and we can't magic up multi-millions of dollars to invest in infrastructure. That's not our job. And I guess just looking at this picture though in New Zealand, it's a serious space to be in. And yeah, Taumata Arawai did some work around early on and looking at wastewater plants across New Zealand, and there were some stats there around that, and I think 27% of wastewater treatment plants achieved full compliance, and around 47% had significant non-compliance, and in the 21-22 analysis, nearly 10% of wastewater treatment plants in New Zealand were operating on expired consents. 412 consent non-conformances were reported, and only 36 compliance actions were taken in response. And yeah, that was a bit of an issue right across the country. So I think that this report shows that actually in Otago, we're no different. We have some issues, but we're doing our job as a council. We're doing it consistently. We issue consents, we monitor and we enforce, and we do that, and it shows that in the report we do take action as well. But yeah, there's an issue. Thank you.
Councillor Malcolm, did you want to speak now, or?
Yeah, I might as well. Look, I'm very happy. I was going to say I was happy with the report. The staff have presented the report. I'm confident that the staff are doing and using the legislation and their tools as best they can. I think all those tools are far too lenient, and I think and it has been signalled it is about time that TA's got a good shake up around this whole waste treatment plant is their core business, and for New Zealand, we just need to do it better. So take away the fluffy stuff and get these fixed. So that's what I'll be saying, and I'll be advocating for that. So thanks for the report.
Councillor Laws.
Sure. Thank you. First of all, it's great that the report is here. It's a massive improvement on how we used to conduct ourselves in this space. And the individual analysis of each of the wastewater treatment plants in the region is a good thing. That said, what the report shows us quite clearly is that wastewater treatment plants are the problem children of the Otago environment. They are the worst polluters of anything or anybody, of any industry or any individuals or any corporates in our region. And I'm not keen on treating polluters like this with kid gloves at all. The fact that we haven't seen any improvement in compliance through the audits we've conducted over the last 4 years is shocking. And if that was the dairy industry, we'd be down their throats just like that, along with any other sector of the community that had delivered these kind of results. The issue of the Shotover, can I say there's a real trust issue, and I want to put this on the public record. There is a real public trust issue in the Queenstown Lakes and the Central Otago region, probably the whole Dunstan region, as exacerbated very much by acknowledged communication failures by the Queenstown Lakes District Council. And that has led to a suspicion from many of us who live and reside and work in this area as to whether or not the QLDC can be trusted to A, tell the truth, and B, be transparent, and C, reveal their shortcomings to the rest of us. For that reason, I think the ORC has to step up and assure the public of the Dunstan region, but all those who are on the receiving end of the Shotover inadequacies. And we've got 41 full-time compliance staff. I don't have any difficulty with saying that's our job. This is as basic a compliance responsibility as compliance responsibilities get. The big question is whether or not we are changing attitudes, whether or not our compliance and monitoring and auditing is having any effect whatsoever upon these polluting agencies, and whether we're changing behaviour. And certainly on the evidence contained in this paper, I can't see anything that would suggest that it is, which requires us, I believe, to continue to investigate this matter from a policy point of view to ensure that there is a much better uptake of environmental responsibility from TAs in our region on this matter. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Alrighty, we'll go to Councillor Culliher and then Wilson.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, echoing all of what has just previously been said. What really worries me is that this is the worst report I think I've seen in the past few years. And I had thought that the TAs actually were doing a good job in how they managed and maintained their plants. So they're the same plants, are the same consents, they're operating under the same goalposts, and yet we suddenly have a very red, very poor looking report on compliance. And what worries me is that is the systematic of what is happening across local government, across New Zealand at the moment. We're seeing substantial rates rises. The cost of councils doing business, it is always blamed on the basics, on water management, and yet we're seeing this level of compliance. Then you'd have to drill down into, well, actually, what is going wrong here? That it is costing people more to get a lesser outcome, a worse outcome. And unfortunately for us, it is the environment, and that is what we manage. And so I think the growth of the ORC has enabled a far better level of reporting, and we are able now to show that this level of compliance is unacceptable and we can take a strong stance with it. So that's what I hope we will be doing. But I think the TAs are going to have to do an awful lot better and provide better value for money, and either it's their contractors or them themselves. They need to work a lot harder with them to improve what we're seeing in these reports. It worries me that we ourselves are defining sludge in the Shotover plant and the Shotover discharge site. I think we need to be better with our terminology, because sludge is a very defined term associated with wastewater treatment. And sludge is a byproduct that's taken out. And if we have sludge in the section that it shouldn't be in, and we're continuing to call it sludge, then it has to be something associated with wastewater treatment. So that worries me. We either need to change that terminology, because the community are concerned over there. They are clutching onto every concern, and justifiably so. So I think overall, certainly for the Shotover situation, we need far better transparency than we have had. I'll be very pleased to see the data that we are gathering up available for the community to see as soon as possible. And hopefully that takes some heat out of the situation. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Great report, and I don't share necessarily some of the concerns that others do, because I appreciate that some of these significant non-compliance are not operational. They are about consents. And while I'm glad to see them there, and that we've highlighted that, it may not mean that the systems themselves are failing. These are things that have long lead-ins to get right. They're not necessarily simple fixes, and sometimes they'll require brand new investment. And we're better to get the best result, taking a longer time to consider it, than a short fix that embeds a poor system. I don't think, having said that, that we as leaders have done enough. I think the compliance team have highlighted something to us, and that we should be taking more leadership role. And I'm not sure if it's through the mayor's meetings, and saying, how can we do a section 17, maybe getting the right staff in the right place, shared services at an Otago regional level. I don't know if we're not, if we've done enough in the long-term plan submission basis, but I certainly know that the costs to all of these communities are going to go up, and their rates are going to go up. And I just ask us to really be careful about when we think we're going to do environmental good works with people's ratepayer monies. We understand that there's other investments that have to be made, and as ratepayers to TAs to get environmental improvements. I also want to highlight that reticulated wastewater systems are easy to get a compliance report on. Our Achilles heel in Otago is that we don't understand what's happening in the other non-regulated systems, and that is something that we need to desperately look at, and there are high risk areas. And we've certainly heard from iwi about that, Mana Whenua, about certain areas that they would like us to be checking out what those are. So while we can complain about what we can see, I am more concerned about what we don't know about. So accepting this report, accepting we all could be doing better at a regional leadership space, and I think we need to interrogate ourselves in those options, not here today, but at some stage, about how we could be doing that better. And really working with those councils, helping them to make better decisions, and maybe helping them get the right people in there. But thank you. I don't think we need to necessarily worry about all of the things that we see as we don't.
Councillor
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I think my view is that we need to lift up to the helicopter view and just for a moment reflect on how we've got to this point. And as the report has said, there's 31 wastewater treatment plants with 50 odd discharge consents. Most of those plants were developed or consented and built probably 15, 20 and maybe even longer years ago, and they were lawfully established with consent conditions. Now, since then, our expectations have moved on, the community's expectations have moved on, and the national water standards or national policy statement, environmental standards for freshwater have also moved on. So I think we need to just remember this hasn't sort of happened overnight. This hasn't been caused by any particular TA trying to avoid compliance. I think a lot of these plants need serious attention, and some are probably past their use by date. Some have secondary treatment, some have tertiary treatment. Tertiary treatment obviously being better than secondary, but really where we're heading, they probably should all have tertiary treatment this day and age. But, and as Councillor Kelleher and others have said about the cost, the sort of costs involved, the dollars are huge. And I can just remember Dunedin City Council spent $220 million to upgrade Te Huna wastewater treatment plant, plus the Green Island wastewater treatment plant. This was between about 2000 and 2010 or 12. Now, if they were to replace those two plants today, it would be the best part of $1 billion. So that's $1 billion. So that's big biggies. And if you spread that across Otago with all those 31 wastewater treatment plants, I'd hate to think what the number is. However, I accept that this particular paper has had a good, robust, and we've had robust debate and we've scrutinised it. But I think it's important to remember how we got here and to move forward. I think that the Three Waters debate has probably set us back a little bit because of the uncertainty. But I'd like to think that there wouldn't be one elected member on a TA that wouldn't want a better outcome for their environment and to ensure that their treatment plants are modern enough to be acceptable in this day and age.
Does anyone else want to add to the discussion before we put the recommendations? Well, yeah.
Just saying, I just want to, as a right of reply, quickly say,
If it is a right of reply, I'll just jump
sorry.
in before.
Sorry,
If
Elliot,
it's a right of
sure,
reply, I
go
was
for
just going to
it.
commend
Yeah,
with
no worries.
the diligent, tireless work from the staff to ensure OSC's doing our bit in this environment of quite high scrutiny. And recognising the importance of these issues to our communities and the sort of, as Councillor Noon and others touched on, national level sort of historic issues underlying much of the non-compliance. As has been said, the responsibility for that compliance with the conditions lies squarely with those local councils, but unless we'll be collecting robust and reliable data on a weekly basis by the sounds of it, and that'll be published online very soon for the public to see. And then, of course, there are ongoing court processes to deal with some of these issues too, that obviously we can't talk much about, but I think make clear that OSC as the regulator takes these matters very seriously. So I hand over to Councillor Robertson for
Thanks,
the
I
final
think you
word.
might have done my right of reply, Councillor Weir. I was going to say that, yeah, we are doing compliance monitoring, and Mr. Saunders noted in Wakatipu that it was unprecedented levels. So there should be a high level of trust that we are doing that. And that we have also going to put that on the website so it's even more transparent. But we act if it's non-compliant as well. So yeah. Just in terms of comments around mayoral forum and whether or not councils are getting together and thinking about what the best value for ratepayers is, they certainly are. They've commissioned a lot of reports. They've dug really deep. They've tried really hard. Every mayoral forum we get together and talk about the water services and try to move forward and think about what model makes the most sense to be the most best value for communities. There's collaborative work going on where it can go on. So yeah, don't think for a moment that work doesn't happen. It does happen. And that's not for me to comment on really, because I'm not a TA, just that it does happen in that forum. And yeah, that it impacts all of us. So that's important. And other than that, thanks, Elliot. You covered the things that I want to say.
Sorry to steal your thunder there, but I will put the motion, and that's that we are simply noting this report after all that. So, all in favour?
Aye.
All against? All right, and that wraps us up for 9.3. So, thanks to Joe and the team. we'll move on to 9.4, which I think Amanda's coming. Yes, Amanda's coming over, and that is around LGNZ's local electoral reform draft position paper. So I said we've got essentially three options in front of us for that with one recommendation. Amongst those options and three motions there. So I'll let you take this away.
Perfect. I'm going to hand over to Mariana, who has read this paper and is keen to talk to you today about the process.
Afternoon all. I'll take the paper as read and hope that you've had a chance to look at the draft position paper, which is the second in a series through this process. I just thought I'd mention, because I didn't mention it in the paper itself, that at the same time as this discussion paper from LGNZ, you may be aware that there is a bill in front of Parliament called the Term of Parliament Enabling 4-Year Term Legislation Amendment Bill. It doesn't currently propose that there be a 4-year term enabled for local government. So in addition to thinking about this response to the draft position paper from LGNZ, it is possible to submit on that bill as well by next Thursday. So I think it would make sense to consider those in tandem if you choose to. We probably would need to submit on the LGNZ one largely at the same time, given all the holidays coming up. Yeah, that's my idea. Thank you.
So do we have any questions around the table? If there's none around the table, I've got, all right, we'll go to Councillor Somerville.
Thank you. Look, I suppose it's just to clarify if it's from the recommendation, clarify the best way of receiving councillors' input into that and a bit of detail about how that would best work.
I thought I would see what happened, which is not always a great strategy. Certainly it would be possible to just pick up on the conversation today, go back to the recording and put forward the questions you have. It's a fairly informal process. It's not we're not responding to a public committee. We're just providing feedback to LGNZs, to the authors of the paper. So if there's a substantive discussion today, I could pick up comments made and put them in a document, and I've suggested in the recommendations that Gretchen be authorised to approve the collated comments. Another option would be to set up a separate discussion with the submissions working group and go into things in a little more detail. It really depends on how much interest there is in the proposals.
I guess I just wonder how that can work, because I would have comments on that draft position paper, but they're not questions. And they're not really the debate, because we've got our separate recommendations. So I just wonder whether it might be better to have, rather than just this meeting, some other way, as you're suggesting, we might be able to do.
Happy to defer to the chair on how you want the meeting to go.
Yes, well, I'll go to the other questions. But if people have feedback on the paper, the draft working paper rather than the paper in front of us in terms of council, more so than would be captured by the remaining time in the meeting, perhaps if we think a workshop might be possible, to collate some of that feedback, but I'm not sure what staff think.
Yeah, we could set up an online a drop-in session where you come and share your views. Mariana could, I think you've done it previously, we've seen how SurveyMonkey sort of question style and people have responded via email and that's then been collated, or picking up on the feedback today.
Yeah. We'll get through the questions and then we'll come to that. So I've got Councillor Laws and Councillor Wilson.
Sorry, I'm speaking to the motion, yeah?
No.
We're just on questions.
Oh, no, I won't speak to the issue, so no questions.
All right. Councillor Wilson.
I was really impressed with this paper and the calibre of it, and I'm just wondering why you thought option one, endorsing the paper and the draft recommendations wasn't appropriate. Can I
Just going back up.
see option one, I thought, I was very happy with all of them to say, have considered everything very, very well.
It's perfectly appropriate if everyone's comfortable with all of the content and we want to just provide support to LGNZ for the work that they've done. I think I put preferred next to option two, just in case they're, to give people a chance to influence if that was the preference.
Okay, and if we wanted to take the lead on the matter of the 4-year term and the act before, so the bill before Parliament, that would just be another, the council submit in support, but that both acts were changed at the same time, I presume. It seemed to me that I was amazed that it hasn't come up, because it's fraught to have one set as a 3-year and one as a 4-year, because they could happen at the same time. And there's a whole lot of other reasons why it wouldn't make sense. The question then would be whether it should be, governments can fall apart, especially under coalitions, in any other term, but trying to keep them at a separation would be fraught. I suppose that's a difficulty, but yeah.
I'm just thought, I'm not sure how much detail you're aware of with the term of Parliament bill, but it is it allows for either a 3-year term or a 4-year term, and so it's it wouldn't apply directly to a local government setting. It did. I think perhaps that's where their logic is, but I agree that it creates other problems.
Yeah. If I was submitting on that one was, let's just pick one and before, and the second one would be that we should be, that local government should be, and an all term should be it. But how that pans out is always difficult. Thank you.
Councillor Malcolm, and then Councillor Laws, is there?
I'll foreshadow, I'm happy to foreshadow option one as a motion.
Councillor Laws, is that for a question or just all the hand up from before? Just checking.
No, it's not. It's for a.
All right, I'll go Councillor Malcolm then.
Oh, yeah, no, I was just waiting for, I thought we're here to move either option 1, 2 or 3, so I was just waiting for someone to do that to see where the discussion went. So I was just clarifying that that's what we're here to do.
I foreshadowed one.
So one's been foreshadowed. If we have a seconder for that, we can go to that, but I know had at least one councillor. Is that to second that?
Yeah, I can second option one.
Okay. And then that would be just approving as is.
And foreshadow probably a submission to that bill, but that would have to come later. I can't, separately.
Yeah, that might be something just to do with the submissions working group. Internally.
Okay.
But if we have
So we're in debate on one now, are we?
Just checking that we don't have any more questions before I take the motion that's just been foreshadowed. Doesn't look what we do. Yes, so we're now in debate for the motion that Councillor Wilson's just moved, which I assume is all 3, but for option for recommendation 2, that would be option 1. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. Is that
Right,
clear to
that's
everyone?
three changes.
Can I just check?
Yeah, so
It would be notes to report recommends that the Otago Regional, I think feedback is to supporting option 1, and then agrees the chair be authorised to approve and submit the feedback to Local Government New Zealand also.
So is the intention still that councillors would be giving feedback, because option 1 is no feedback? So I just wonder if
The feedback goes.
is that right? Is it worth for a few minutes?
Okay, happy
get
to,
that sorted?
yeah. I'll have to move that we get that right if you want to.
Yeah. I'm just going to move that we adjourn, seconded, and that will just be for 5 minutes.
Councillor Laws and Councillor Forbes back on.
We'll just get
I'm speaking to
Councillor
the
Wilson to speak to the motion, and then if that's like a clarifying question or something, we'll talk about that.
Thank you. Look, I'm going to speak for this motion, and I appreciate that there may be people wanting to think on separate recommendations. The committee that put this together have huge, vast experience, both at central government and at local government level. And I am absolutely confident that they have thought through all of the issues that we may have and will have a resolution to them that may or may not come out in that paper. I think doing this cleanly and seeing what comes out of it. The fact is that you get anything from local government for central government to support is always fraught, and the cleaner we can make it and the more unanimous we can be for these sort of changes, the better. As much as that detail, leave it to the others to sort. And I'm really confident that I'm really impressed with the calibre of the people who contributed to this.
Alrighty, I will go to council laws and then call in some.
Okay, listen, there's no way in the world that I can support this, and I had the opportunity to have a conversation with the author of this report, Nick Smith, last week in some detail. It's important to know what this paper does, and that we are not discussing this without this sort of cursory overview that we're doing right now. It's not a very good commentary on ourselves. Can I say, for example, that what this is going to promote is not only a 4-year terms for local government, but also propaganda in our schools, where council will be going into schools and promoting itself and its agendas, and then aiming to deal with the wrong problem with the wrong solution. They've misidentified the problems, it seemed to me, and then they've come up with exactly the wrong solutions for them. But this is typical local government New Zealand, of which I think, 6, 7, 8 now councils have withdrawn from, including our 2 largest, Auckland and Christchurch councils. The real problem and the real reason people don't vote in local body elections is because they don't think their vote's going to count. And what Nick Smith and the authors of this report have suggested is that there is declining voter turnout in local government because there's something wrong with the system of voting, which, if you remember rightly, is a postal ballot over 3 weeks. And what they intend to replace it with is going back to essentially the way in which general elections are run. And then you simply turn up and vote in the booth, but they're going to extend that voting period over a similar time of 3 weeks. And they're even going to have, they hope, some of the booths in supermarkets where they know people will go so that they can waylay them on their way to their shopping. The real reason that there is such a low turnout of voters for local government, well, there are 2. The first is voters don't actually believe that they're going to make a blind bit of difference to their local council, who they put around the council table or not. There is a fundamental lack of trust in whether or not governors, elected governors, will actually be able to influence councils and their rating demands and their appetites for ratepayers and residents' money or not. And the second reason is because many of the people who stand for council, they simply don't recognise. They don't recognise them in the community. They're retired, for example. They might have nothing better to do with their time. But the fact of the matter is that the way in which councils are run in this country obviates ordinary people from standing for council. I'm talking about wage and salary earners. I'm talking about people with young families. I'm talking about the self-employed trying to run a business. Because there is so much time, effort and energy spent on, well, frankly, meetings like this that really achieve nothing and has no greater purpose. Their pay is inadequate, so it's not a full-time job. And at a place like Central Otago District Council or Waitaki, I imagine would be another, Cluth would be another, their demands upon their time would be so much greater than ours around the regional council table, but they're probably paid about 1/3 of our salary to do it. So again, people don't recognize that there's a dislocation between the governors and between the communities that they're meant to serve. And then there finally is this. Around New Zealand, there is a strong view that chief executives and senior managers essentially run the agendas of council, and the way in which the Local Government Act set up at the moment sort of exacerbates that to a large degree. the opportunity for governors to be able to influence policy decisions, long-term plans, district plans and the like, seems to be correspondingly getting dimmer with the passage of each term. And so what this Local Government New Zealand's decided to do is, the problem is voter turnout. That's the real problem why people aren't voting. It's simply because we haven't availed ourselves of a better way. And then to make matters worse, we want, after you got elected, to give you a term for 4 years so that our uselessness can be in actual fact perpetuated for another year without having to go back to the community and ask for some sort of mandate. There's nothing in this paper that addresses the fundamental issues that affect and plague local government, nor of the breach between the community and between local government, which seems to be widening into a chasm as demonstrated in declining public participation rates, not just at voting, but also in consultation around long-term plans and the like. For that reason, this is just silly sophistry at the end of the day, no intention of voting for it. And it would be nice to think that Local Government New Zealand might actually start to try and reason why it isn't working, rather than come up with silly solutions that will only simply confirm the problem.
Any thoughts there, Councillor Laws, Councillor McCall?
I have a question actually, if that's all right.
Is it a question of clarification?
Well, clarification for me.
Yeah, we are in the debate.
You said at the beginning you were going to go have questions first, and then Michael whacked in with his
We did them, and then we moved to motions, and we adjourned to make sure that motion was right.
We can take a question now. Yeah.
No, my question is this: I assume if we were to support the motion, that this is a draft, the local government's draft position, and by supporting that motion, we will be supporting the final position as opposed to the draft position.
My understanding is that they will, is this on? My understanding is that they will release the final, well, they've said that they'll release the final paper at Superlocal LGNZ conference mid-year. I don't think that paper will belong to LGNZ. It won't, I don't think that by supporting the draft, you are implicitly supporting that final paper. I'm not sure what their process might be to seek approvals for take that further or similar. They haven't set out a process beyond that tabling of the paper.
So the final draft would come back to us prior to LGNZ to have to decide whether we vote for or against.
They haven't set out a process for the final paper in any way other than presenting it at that conference. So I wouldn't expect so. No, I think they will, they'll present it to reflect the feedback received and as their own paper.
Does that answer your question?
No.
Thank you very much. Look, I believe there's a lot of very, very good material in this draft position paper from LGNZ. It addresses some important issues and it provides some very intelligent solutions. I do have reservations about some of them though, which is why I would much prefer to go for what's down in the paper as option 2. And I note the advantages for option 2 are that it signals support for the activities of the working group and its recommendations and allows council to provide feedback on one or more recommendation. I do have that extra feedback. That is, I have broad support for it, but I do have some extra feedback. So I won't be supporting the current motion, which was approve it as is, and I'd like to foreshadow, should that fail, I will be moving to go for that option 2, which again can be support for this, but allows us to provide some further feedback or detail in there. And it might not only be me who has some of those extra comments. Thanks.
Do we have anyone else wishing to, Councillor Kelleher?
Yeah, okay. I don't support 4-year term, and I also don't support LGNZ. Like other councils have pulled out, I think OIC should pull out as well. So I'm not a supporter of option 1. If it ever got to it, I'd be a supporter of option 3. Thank you.
I'll just jump in to say that, yeah, broadly support the paper. There's definitely a few things I would give feedback on if we were going to that step, but not significant enough that I'll vote against going for option one. But I am concerned about, in particular, how it meshes with the bill in Parliament at the moment. But broadly very supportive. So I'll be voting for all these recommendations. Would anyone else like to add to the discussion? Or do we have a right of reply from either the mover or the seconder, Councillor Forbes?
No, I'm fine. I broadly agree with Kate's position that the work has been done, that there's not more for us to do on this, which is why I support option one.
Right reply. I was just going to say, I think the frustration in why people give up on councils is too much hurry, not enough doing, and that's because we have a 3-year term that doesn't allow for people just to progress things. We're ever worried about what people are going to think about, and that's exactly why the government is considering the 4-year term as well. I think the other matters that have been traversed as negatives, I think that comes down to resourcing and our own ability to be positive about the leadership we should be offering as councillors. And with all respect, aren't necessarily valid concerns that we should be worried about around this table.
Alrighty, I'll put the motion. All in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Or against?
No.
Vision.
Alright.
You want to do division?
Yeah, do it in simple, so.
Cool.
All right. Councillor Forbes,
Aye.
Councillor Callagher,
No.
Councillor Laws,
No.
Councillor Malcolm,
No.
Councillor McCall,
No.
Councillor Noon,
Aye.
Councillor Robertson,
Aye.
Councillor Somerville,
No.
Councillor Weir,
Aye.
and Councillor Wilson.
Aye.
So I've got
And
5
Cuddy.
in favour and,
One.
pardon,
Aye.
Miss Lansbury, yes. So I've got 6 in
Oh, you're-
favour.
you're-
and
Opposed.
So I had 6 in favour, councillor. Including Mr Lansbury, and 5 against, so motion is carried.
Out of my hands, nice. And that's us.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, can you clarify that for me?
The votes, it was 6 for 4 and 5 against.
No, there weren't.
So I had in favour councillor Forbes.
Yeah, sorry, Kylie, just, Michael will just read out, the list from the division.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that he realises Hawani's in the room in this committee.
In favour, councillor Forbes, councillor Noon, councillor Robertson, councillor Weir, councillor Wilson, and Mr Lansbury.
Oh, sorry.
Alrighty.
Did it out the alphabetical order, Ronnie.
Yeah.
Now that that's.
I'm not going to run next time
all
either, so
clear.
I'll always be Mr Lansbury. Thanks very much.
So Mr. we got some past councillor.
Ronnie.
We have hit the bell on 5 PM, so I'll let staff return. Thank you very much, Amanda and Mariana. Thanks to councillors for being here. I'll wrap us up with a karakia as we opened the day. Kia tautirani Māori e, ki runga i ngā iwi o te ao.